Hello and welcome to Tête-à-tête with Tiwa. I'm Tineke.
And I'm Wale.
Question we're going to answer today is, have you ever had differing approaches to any aspect of parenting? If yes, then how did you both move forward?
How do we form a consensus?
Yes, if we have different approaches. Well, first of all, do we have different approaches or did we have different? Because I think now is quite late. We've been parents for 20 years, 21 years. So at the beginning, did we have different differing approaches?
Not glaringly different. I think they were quite similar, actually, if you ask me. Though we had some different in opinions. I don't know about approaches per se. Probably.
So what do you mean? Give an example.
So I always felt that a child is a child. When I say child, a baby, it's a baby. I didn't think I would pay much mind to anything that a child did, probably up to the age of maybe 3, 4. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was happy to let them get away
with murder,
with anything till that age. But you stepped in at, I think, 1 or something like that. It must have been
like 9 months
or something.
Yeah,
right.
Because
yeah,
because I believe that we don't give children credit. They hear, they see, so even if they're not speaking, they're taking in, they're learning, and so if we want to teach them, then we need to be teaching them from day dot, because you can't be like waiting till they're 3, because by then they've seen everything or they've learned whatever just through your actions, through your behaviors. They've already learned, and then you're now trying to change what you've taught them. So I just think that we forget that children are human beings a lot of the time, and we kind of treat them as children that don't have a brain, don't have, we kind of do that. I don't buy into that. So yes, okay. So at the beginning, because I remember it was with our firstborn, and I remember when I was making him face the wall for something, and Wally was like, he's not even 1, he doesn't understand. And I was like, he does, so I think that's what you're referring to.
Yeah,
that's something. Yeah. So yeah, okay, so that was at the beginning.
Yeah, so that was and then so that was different. We had different opinions. Yes, there. Then you explained to me why this is the course to take, and so on and so forth. And so we came to a consensus. It was an agreement. As in, okay, fair enough. Or one might say I conceded. But I saw that it worked. I saw that all I needed to do next time was be noticed to say to him, do you want to face the wall? And that zapped it.
You see, the other thing that I wanted to address is, because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I think we've had disagreements about this before. I thought that you thought that we would smack our children, that would be part of their discipline process.
No, it was never been a consideration for me.
So you were never going to smack your kids?
No.
That's interesting. Because you see,
my dad never smacked me.
Yeah, no, but your mom did.
Yeah, but my dad never. And
so because you're a dad, you would never. But did you expect me to smack them?
If you had decided to go that route, I don't think I would have protested. When I say smack, we're not talking
beats, not beats. Smack to correct.
I wouldn't have protested. I don't think. But for me, it wasn't even an option because my dad never smacked me, so therefore it wasn't obvious.
This is interesting because I kind of thought maybe I will smack because that was the way we were brought up, that, I'll probably smack, but I wasn't, it wasn't like you must beat your child must be smacked, etc. It was like, if necessary. But I realized very early on that it wasn't going to work and I wasn't going to do it. But I actually did think that would have been Wale's choice of discipline, maybe is that the word, of discipline. But I went ahead with, facing that. Because when you were saying face the wall, I was thinking people would be thinking, why are you talking about it? Because I went ahead with, I thought, okay, let me go with what I would rather do. Because I also believe that you teach children stuff. And I remember the first time I smacked...
the wall also translates to timeout, by the way.
Yeah. And I remember the first time I smacked our son, I just gave him a tap on the hand. And he smacked me back and he thought it was a game. And right there, I just thought, no, I don't even want to teach him that smacking or hitting is appropriate in any form. So I made the decision right there that that's it. We're not going to do that to our children. But I must admit, I didn't know for a fact that I wouldn't run into problems with Wale with it later, because I kind of thought, I knew he had been brought up, well, that his mom had smacked him. So I thought, he's probably going to have a problem with this. But we never got into the, you know what I mean? So it was much later that I realized that smacking wasn't even on his agenda anyway, at least not for him. So yeah, so that was interesting. So I think that's one way we've dealt with it. I mean, the other thing that comes to mind for me in terms of parenting is because one of our children is quite sensitive, and I remember you being very much like, why the crying for no reason, why the that, and being quite like, you don't cry for no reason. And so in that situation, because I realized that it was not just a being silly thing, it was actually the way he's created, he's just slightly more sensitive. So I remember we had this conversation where you said, okay, that's it, I'm going to leave it to you, because I felt like he was being much too hard, and he felt like I was being too soft. And so in the end, we came to the agreement that, okay, you know what, in terms of this aspect of this child's development, Tinuka, you take it and you deal with it, and then I know that's so that's how we dealt with that. I still think maybe you probably still think I'm a bit soft with him.
Not anymore. Not anymore, because I think over time I've also grown to understand him. I mean, essentially, I'm able to understand, and so now I know how to deal with the child a lot better, and I know where the child is coming from, certain aspects of where I would be like, come now, you can't just be crying for the fun of it, or why are you being so sensitive? That probably would have said toughen up. I now understand, and I think, yeah, but these were not
differing approaches.
Yeah, approaches.
Well, it was a different approach. This particular one was because whilst I was kind of doing what you were calling mollycoddling, you were kind of doing the toughen up thing.
Okay.
But I felt like that particular child didn't need that. That toughening up could damage the child better than help the child.
Right. Yeah.
So I think you see the key thing here also is about knowing the children, and also understanding that each child is an individual and parenting them individually, if that makes sense. Because there's a slap bang thing where you kind of grow up thinking, well, all my kids they're all going to do this, and they're all going to go to this school, and they're all going to this. There was one time we had 4 children in 4 different schools, because I kind of, despite thinking that I was going to have all my kids in the same school, I now realize that actually some schools are not suitable for some children, and just because it's the nearest school or it's the whatever school doesn't mean what is in the best interest of the child. Now I say that it's hard because it's hard, and also bear in mind that my children are quite well spaced, so it wasn't like I was driving to 4 different schools. Some were going to school by themselves. But I do think that it's important as parents to understand that your children are individuals, and yes, have your basic standards as a family, that these are our values as a family, these are our expectations as a family, etc. But with that as your foundation, you then have to parent each child individually. You do, because they're different, and you can't. So I don't know, I just think that's, and I think maybe also at the beginning you didn't quite get that. I didn't even at the very, very beginning.
Yeah.
To be fair.
No, at the beginning, I don't think. No, I don't even think it was at the beginning. Because of course we started with one, and so
yeah, no, I mean, so when the second one came.
When the second one came, when the second one came, I guess then okay, different sex.
Yeah.
And then I guess from then on, I think I had to understanding that they're different.
Yeah. So I guess maybe not so much. I guess I mean, I think we've said this on here before. It's down to your values, isn't it? Because we have a lot of values that are the same. The approaches are not necessarily, You know what I mean? Because if you have the same values, you can now come back to, okay, this value system, but this is how I think. You know what I mean? As opposed to, so yes, the approaches matter, but can easily be changed to, you know, if the values are the same, you can
Refined.
Yeah, you can refine them to make them work in, you know, and still maintain the value system. Because I think a lot of the time, what we're doing is trying to, it's all about the value system, isn't it? The approach, the way we do it might be different, but if the value system is the same, then we can come back to the values and be like, okay, do you know what? This is what we're trying to instill, or this is what we want. How else can we do it? You know, or can it work as well this way as it could that way? You know, so I'm not sure that different approaches is necessarily a bad thing, because I think for, you know,
I think what's important is what we might term the bottom line. The bottom line is the same. It's and then really it's just about how do we reach this bottom line.
And also in reaching that bottom line, you have to think, and this is what I'm saying, you now have to think about, for this child, how do we reach this bottom line? Because reaching the bottom line for this child might be different from reaching it for the other child. Because one child, and I always use the example, one of our children has severe allergies, and using the example of the child that's particularly sensitive and the child that has severe allergies, I remember one of the children saying to me once that I let the child that's very sensitive get away with something that I would not have let them get away with. And I explained to them that if I gave the child with severe allergies something that that child is allergic to, it could result in a very serious case of illness. It could result in death, to be fair. In the same way, if I gave this sensitive child that, you know, if I spoke to them in that manner, or if I did something to that sensitive child, it could result in quite serious repercussions, because that child is not built the way. So because, you know, it's like people say, oh, milk is good for children. If we give milk to our child that has severe allergies, we're looking at a long hospital stay, if not death. Do you get what I mean? So you can't just say, oh, because milk is good for children, it is good for this child. It's not good for this child. The same way that you can't just say, okay, because this is good for, it's not, this child is particularly sensitive, and speaking to this child this way could end up in, you know, so it's just about knowing your children and parenting individually, but not in doing that doesn't mean that you are letting them get away with anything. You're still maintaining your values, but you just have to get it across in the way that is going to be best for that child, and the way the child is going to receive it. I mean, we say this all the time, it's the same even with any relationship. But I think that the challenge is that a lot of times as parents, we don't feel like we should give our children that respect of, you know, we kind of think, well, they're children, you know. So I think that's what I would say on that.
Yeah, so in conclusion, I think, how have we dealt with different
approaches,
parental approaches, is we've agreed. We've communicated our different styles or approaches or whatever we might want to term them as, and we've agreed on a consensus way to go forward.
Yeah. And remember that in the case of this particularly sensitive child, Wale's the agreement was Wale just giving it to me to deal with. So it doesn't necessarily mean, because he didn't necessarily agree with my way of doing it, but the agreement was, okay, you know what? I trust you enough. You do it. That was the agreement. So sometimes the agreement will not be a, oh yes, what you said is right. That might not be the agreement, because that wasn't the agreement in this case. But the agreement was that, okay, you know what? I trust you. Go on. I'm just going to step out of this. If you need me, you call me. But for this one, you deal with it. And that's how we came to the agreement. So I think it's important to just specify that agreement doesn't always mean we're saying the same thing.
Oh, yeah. But at the end of the day, why I say agreement is, like I said, what's the baseline? The bottom line is we're trying to achieve this. How do we achieve this? If this is the way that we're going to achieve this, then we go that route.
Yeah.
That's essentially it.
That's it.
So, again, it's communicating it.
Communication, I don't know how many times we have said that communication is key.
Absolutely.
See you next time.
Ciao.